So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lucia Jara. I am acting editor-in-chief of Euractiv Slovakia web portal, and it is my utmost pleasure to welcome you today at today's debate, Who Counts Weapons in Ukraine? During today's panel, we intend to focus on the state of arms proliferation in Ukraine after it had been attacked in February 2020. And we will talk about how difficult it is to transfer Western military material to Ukraine, how it is coordinated. We will look into monitoring who in the alliance, in NATO, is making sure that military equipment does not end up in the wrong hands, let's say. And we will also check for social implications, whether Ukraine will remain the most militarized country in the world once it endures, once it wins the war. I'm very glad that we were able to put together such discussion and invite more than interesting people into this debate. I'm also very happy for many of you who are logging in here, either on Zoom directly to the webinar or seeing us through web portal or through social networks. I would very much like to thank to our partner, Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, Friedrich Ebert Foundation, and its representation in Slovakia, who we are cooperating on covering this topic for several years. Every year, we are addressing the arms control issues via event and via articles. And I would like to give some kudos and credentials to Friedrich Ebert Stiftung to really keeping this topic alive in Slovakia and to focus on this. Talking about crucial people, another expression of gratitude certainly has to go to our distinguished guest. We'll be hearing from Rüdiger Heinrich, who is the defense attaché of the Federal Republic of Germany, accredited in the Slovak Republic here in Bratislava. So who will also open the discussion with a welcome note. At the panel, we do have Martin Oltmann, who is defense advisor at the permanent mission of the Slovak Republic to the UN, OSCE, and other international organizations in Vienna. He has been advising the Slovak Ministry of Defense in various capacities within the last decade, if I'm not wrong, including acting as the legal advisor at the International Law Division or as a military observer for the Slovak Verification Center. Martin, welcome as well. And Jennifer Spindle, assistant professor of political science, that is correcting to us from United States, representing University of New Hampshire. Thank you very much, Jennifer, for logging in. It's very early morning in the US. Jennifer researches on international security, foreign policy, alliances, and civil military relations. Her current book project argues that the state use arms transfers to send signals about the political alignment, even when the weapon does not affect the balance of power. This is what I've read and what I've heard, but I'm sure Jennifer will be talking about the project as well. Thank you very much once again for logging in. We're happy to have you. Unfortunately, Federica Delarge from Vienna Center for Disarmament and Non-Proliferation, that we were supposed to also host today, had to unfortunately cancel for personal reason at the last moment, but I hope we will be able to fill in for her. Another important addition to our debate can be you, our distinguished audience that we have here in the webinar at Zoom. Thank you for logging in, following us online. I am glad that we could welcome many representatives of state institutions, diplomats, expert think tankers, a member of academia, NGOs, and others that are interested in the topic from Slovakia, but also from abroad. We're very much encouraging you to write your questions or comments into the Q&A bar, which you find here in Zoom. We will try to address those questions. I will try to choose. Several questions we already received via your application, so I will try to include those as well. I got my 5 minutes of introduction, but now I'm going to let speak to the others. I'm going to start with Rudiger and Heinrich, who will shortly outline the topic for us and focus especially on what is Germany doing by into supporting Ukraine. Rudiger, the floor is yours.
Yeah, good morning, Lucia. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Lucia, like said, you give me an advice. If the connection is not perfect, then I will switch on off the video. First, why I'm sitting here. I'm the German Defense Attaché to Slovakia, and I would like to underline at the beginning that Slovakia and Germany worked strong together in order to support Ukraine with military aid and also with non-military aid. I come to this back later in detail. And thank you very much for Slovakia's support to Germany, because a lot of issues we did bilaterally to Ukraine are only able by nations like Poland and Slovakia, which do have a borderline with Ukraine. This is clear. And so you can imagine we do have a very, very deep relationship to Slovakia. And again, thanks for what you did in the last time and seeing what will happen in future. Coming to the issue. For Germany, in order that you can understand why we Germans are so interested in this topic, and you will be not surprised when I will start with the first sentence, we have no solution to that item, but that you can understand why we are so interested is that when comparing support for Ukraine by country, Germany now comes third with around 21 billion of euros up to date. This is a huge amount of money, especially in military goods. Only that you understand, we invested up to the end of October, up to now 17 billion of euros in military goods and weapons and equipment we deliver to Ukraine. Only the United States as a country and the European Union as such did more. And in military goods, only the United States did more, if you like to compare it, what we did. So this topic is quite important for us. And that you get a feeling what I'm talking about, I can tell you what we already sent. I will not give you the whole list, but that you have a feeling. We sent out, for example, now at the moment, more than 50 tanks, Leopard 1 and Leopard 2, Ukraine, and we stand ready to increase this number up to additional 150 more. We sent infantry fighting vehicles, 40. We invested about 14 tank howitzers, and so on and so on. This, you see, we are talking about heavy, really heavy military equipment. And if you're talking about equipment, it is not only equipment, then you need the logistical support, and especially you need ammunition. The most important ammunition are the 120 millimeter and the 155 millimeters. And you know that we do have a shortfall regarding that ammunition in order to support Ukraine. But you see, this is really a lot. And if you have a look to Air Force, this is also a Slovakian issue, but also for all other NATO countries, an important issue. We already sent one Patriot system and, for example, 5 air defense, ground-based air defense systems, Iris TSLM from Diehl Defense to Ukraine, and we stand ready to send the next 3 systems, which are now produced by the German company Diehl Defense, also to Ukraine. So you see, this is we are sending a lot, but it is not only what NATO and especially my country is sending to Ukraine in terms of military good. I would like to underline. It's also quite interesting what our partners are sending, and then we take for example, for the uranium ammunition, which is sent to Ukraine by United States. And we are also looking what is on the market, so to say it, not very politically correct, but you understand what is coming from countries like China, Iran, and so on, supporting Russia. So in the end, we do have in this current war on Ukraine soil, especially on Ukraine soil, a lot of ammunition and military goods we have to track in the time during the war and also after the war. And we as Germans, we see that a lot of, as for example, Russia stepped out. To be honest, we have contracts with Ukraine in order to use this material, not to deliver it to other countries. But the main issue is the control. And this is why we're sitting here. And you can imagine with the Germans, we have also, when the material is handed over to Ukraine, we have no clear view anymore what is happening with the material. And the second issue is what this makes a little bit problematic for all of us, is that normally this material is in the ownership of Ukraine. It is not any part of the German armed forces or the German government or the Federal Republic of Germany. It is part of Ukraine's ownership. Yeah. And this is quite interesting. And this is my last remark. When you have, for example, the support, the logistical support, the ongoing logistical support from Germany, and now I'm coming back why I'm sitting here, for example, to Michalovce, where we have a maintenance hub for material for Panzerhaubitze 2000, air defense system Gepard, and also for the rocket artillery system Mars. These systems are now in the ownership of Ukraine, coming to Slovakia, repaired by German companies, KMW, or now the KNDS, and then are going back to Ukraine, going back to war. So this is a possibility for us to have a look regarding some material, but it is only a very small piece of the cake where we can see what with the material is happening. Is it already in? Is it still working? Must it be repaired? And is it still, and this is the main question, in the ownership of Ukraine and not delivered to other channels? And you can imagine, we Germans, we are quite interested to come together, what Martin is representing, in United Nations, especially OSZE, in order to have as soon as possible a solution to see and that we can have a feeling about the consequences of the flow of weapons into the battlefields in Ukraine. We are still concerned that this is a big risk and a big spillover to other regions in the world. And last sentence, you got the information that Mr. Prime Minister Netanyahu already said that he faced material from the Ukraine war in the borderlines at Gaza. This should not happen. And this is also from the German point of view, yeah, it's a big mistake. Yeah, it's almost to say a catastrophe. And so we need urgently to work together with the institutions I named a solution in order to cover the material in Ukraine. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much. I think it was very interesting what you just presented, not only the German point of view, but also the major challenges that we're facing, all of us actually together. I will now turn to Jennifer, because in order to maybe see it from the American point of view, that's something that may differ. My question, just to outline, but please follow, also maybe react to what Rüdiger said. How differently does the United States approach the weapon transfer today, comparing to, let's say, the early stages of the war? Is there some kind of development? Obviously, there is. We're hearing a lot about certain war fatigue. What is the reflection in the US?
And great. Thank you so much for having me, and to sort of build on a lot of what Rüdiger was saying. I think in the United States, there was early on, a lot of interest in supporting Ukraine and helping Ukraine push back the Russian invasion, but also not wanting to be the only country sending weapons, and which is why the US was so interested, especially when it came to some of these heavy weapons like main battle tanks, not being the only country sending that type of weapon to Ukraine. So I think the US, was more willing to send arms like the Abrams tank, right, when Germany was willing to send tanks, in the United Kingdom as well. I think what's happened as the front lines have solidified and there hasn't been as much territory movement and recapture as there was early in the war, is that there have been sort of two key changes that I think are relevant for our discussion. One is that the United States decided to send cluster munitions to Ukraine, which are a weapon banned by the Cluster Munition Treaty, which although the US has not signed, right, sent to Ukraine. President Biden in the US has said that this was because Ukraine is running out of ammunition, right? As Rudiger mentioned, there is a shortage of ammunition. Germany and France have been very clear that they will not provide cluster munitions and don't approve of this. Biden also said that Russia was already using these munitions. So I think even as we're seeing this real increase in the heavy equipment, we're also seeing a sort of reliance on these more portable, smaller weapons that are harder to track and sometimes banned under international law. The second big change that we're seeing in the US is domestic politics. So as the conflict has continued, there are a lot of politicians in the United States trying to use aid to Ukraine for domestic political leverage, calling into question why the US is supporting Ukraine and threatening to cut it off. And in one of the most recent bills passed out of the US House, there was support for Israel, but not for Ukraine. So we're starting to see a real fatigue of aid to Ukraine in the United States. And I think the sort of big issue is that the US and the NATO allies don't have the production capacity to keep up with the rate of weapons use in Ukraine, struggling to produce ammunition, artillery. And it's because in most places, the defense industrial base is scaled for peacetime, not for a long conflict. And so facing this, US political leaders have said that the US can't keep giving to Ukraine without now risking US stockpiles and readiness. So there's been a general shift, I think, in the United States, and also questions about whether or not it makes sense to increase the amount of heavy weaponry. So Ukraine does have battle tanks from the US, Germany, UK, right? And in August, the US agreed to train Ukrainian pilots on F-16 fighter jets. And multiple countries have said they plan to make those jets available to Ukraine. So I think in the US, there's a sort of a lot of pushback against arming Ukraine, even as we're seeing a sort of escalation in the types of weapons that are being made available.
If we talk about controlling what is being sent, as Rudiger was outlining also for us, do you see some kind of a public questioning in the US where the arms are flowing, where in which hands the weapons are ending up, and also if you know how does the US actually do this controlling?
So certainly among the US public, there's actually not a lot of questioning about where the weapons are going. There's just sort of an attention to what has been sent, with very little attention then to what happens after the weapons have made it to Ukraine. So the United States is trying to get all of its partner nations, right, to track the weapons that it has sent. All of US arms transfers have an end-use monitoring agreement, that basically says you cannot then send these arms on to a third party. It's really difficult to do that in wartime, as Rudiger said, especially for some of these smaller man-portable weapons like air defense systems, right, like javelins, like missiles that you can move with a really small team. And so in September of this year, the US Pentagon did try to establish a new team in Ukraine to try to monitor arms sent by the US. But they've said that that's extremely difficult, right? It's hard to get information out of an active conflict zone. So even though there are policies in place that are supposed to monitor what's been used, what's been damaged, where are these weapons going, it's really hard to actually get that data out of Ukraine.
We will certainly discuss this monitoring and controlling part a little bit more into details. Now let's go to Vienna and to Martin. How individual states, we've heard from Germany, we've heard from the US, but how the individual states actually reflect on Ukraine's demands regarding weapon delivery? What are the procedures? What types of weapon actually flow to Ukraine? We've heard a couple that are being sent from Germany, from the US, but what are the demands and what is kind of a legal base for it to ask for weapons and then to actually deliver them on the other side?
Thank you very much for the question. And I would like to thank you also for the organizing this meeting and that I should be the part of it as the panel discussion starts. So I will start with the legal procedures, first of all, because I think we have to have something to start with. So from the point of view that there is an armed conflict in the Ukraine, as the baseline for the legality of sending weapons and ammunition to the other state, it's good to mention the reference to the United Nations Charter, namely to the Article 2, Para 4, that all members of the United Nations shall refrain in their international relations, and so on, and Article 51, noting that nothing in the present charter shall impair the inherent right of individual or collective self-defense if an armed attack occurs. So these are the baseline which we have been using to sending weapons and ammunition to the Ukraine, for example. And there are also several international treaties, agreements, or arrangements which are valid in the field of sending or selling weapons to the other countries. For example, Arms Trade Treaty, which is an international treaty that regulates the international trade in conventional arms. And then from the point of the control, from the view of the control, there is a CFE treaty in Europe, which is the Treaty on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe, which established the comprehensive limit on the key categories of conventional military equipment in Europe, and even mandated the destruction of the excess weaponry, which was it was designed in the 90s after the fall of the Curtain Wall and after the fall of the Soviet Union. But then we have to take a look at the specific legal procedures because they are depending on the national legislation of the sole countries. So each country should have some other legal implications and everything. So the states have to apply their international obligations from the international law and from the treaties they are part of. So, for example, as was mentioned by my colleague, the Convention on Cluster Munitions. So this was pretty nice example because there was a discussion also in the Slovakia whether we should send something to Ukraine or not. But as the Slovakia is also the part of the Convention on the Cluster Munition, there is a prohibition that the state party to the convention are obliged by its provision. Therefore, they cannot legally send the cluster munition to the other states. And it doesn't even matter if the other state is the member of the convention or not. So we cannot do that because that will be the breach of the obligations from the Convention on Cluster Munitions. You are only allowed to send the cluster munition to the other states in regards with the destructions of it. So that's the only way you can transfer cluster munitions. So that's the thing. And then we should also mention the United Nations Convention, for example, CCW, Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons and its protocols. And what is pretty also good to mention is the APLC. So that's Anti-Personnel Landmine Conventions or Ottawa Convention. So these all have to be taken into the consideration because every state that is considering sending ammunition or conventional arms needs to consider their national and international obligations. And after that, according to the agreed requirements from the recipient, they should decide on a specific type of material which could be sent to the recipient by the demands. So Ukraine demands regarding the weapon delivery are usually agreed on a high-level meeting of politicians at the level of EU or the NATO or, of course, bilateral meetings. And that gives the possibility to states to precisely identify which military equipment they can offer or they can have, and they have to discuss with the other nations and countries and so on. And after this identifications of need and possible offers, states usually react individually. But we have seen something like in some cases when there is a funding of specific projects together within the group. So this happens, for example, with the project of Zuzana 2, which was in the media. So that was the
it's a Slovak howitzer.
Sorry, and it is a project funding by the other countries. And this is something which should also happen if countries don't have that own capacity and something is needed. So it could be also applying like this, like in the projects together. So this is my start.
Do international organizations that also you are representing Slovakia at monitoring what is the state of weapon production in Ukraine? Is this possible to do it in the state of active war even?
I think they are trying, but it's hard to do that right now, as it was mentioned before, because that's armed conflict ongoing, and it's very very active armed conflict, and it's not very secure to do something like this. So you have to have a lot of informations, and those information may differ and may vary on the situation on the field and I think it's very hard to do that. But of course, yeah, they are trying to do their best, especially as the OSCE and the OSCE has a specialization in small arms also, to try to monitor them. But there is, with the small arms and light weapons, it's very hard to track them because there is
I understand, but then what are the sources of information for the organizations such as OSCE or the UN? Do they have the special groups? Are they sending someone, or do they have contractors? How does this work in practice?
During the peacetime, countries are usually sharing their information. And this is what is based on. The crucial point was that the countries in the United Nations and in the OSCE area, they are sharing their information about the ammunition and conventional arms and so on. But then we are again at the situation that we have war or armed conflict, and it's very hard to track those things there. So I don't have a direct
there probably is not the right and one-line answer for this. I'm going to stay a little bit before we move to the monitoring and controlling part, a little bit with the question that we received from the audience, and it is regarding the scale-up ammunition production in Europe. Rüdiger, if you maybe address the state of it, whether the initiatives are already, we hear a lot about it. There is a lot written on the paper. How would you evaluate the actual progress? Because the war doesn't stop. It just goes way too fast. The production of ammunition or any bigger weapons, larger weapons, this is certainly a long-lasting project, or many of projects that include states, international organizations, but also business, private business. So hold this machinery to make it move. How do you evaluate whether it is doing, or in Europe, whether this is happening fast enough, or we're really having some trackbacks, and where are these maybe hurdles which we need to overcome?
Thank you very much. Coming back to that, what I said and what had been already said by the two other guest speakers, ammunition, to start with an overall assessment, ammunition is the biggest problem, for sure. And you have to keep in mind that all European countries and also the United States in the last 30 years decreased their factories and their streets in order to build ammunition. And we had no scenario till the 24th of February last year that there was a request for all sorts of ammunition in this war like we do have now in Ukraine. So this is the overall story. We have to cover on the one side the production lines the countries do have. And again, as a German defense attaché, you can imagine that also our most significant and contributors and companies, Rheinmetall, and for sure also KMW or now KNDS, but also other, they do not have the capacity in order to increase it so speedy in order to support Ukraine with the ammunition which is demanded by Ukraine, or what is requested also by United States to the European countries. So this is one issue. So, and this was mentioned by Martin. We European Union countries have to come together in order to find ways how we can increase the production of ammunition. And again, when we talk about ammunition, the most important ammunition is the big caliber 155 and also 120 or 125. Depending which systems Ukraine is using. You can imagine if we are talking about NATO systems, Leopard 2 or other tanks, we are talking about 105 and 120. And if you, as an expert, are looking to the old former Soviet Russian systems, we are talking about 125 especially. And this leads me to the point, if you are coming to the point of 125 millimeter, the nations from the former Eastern countries are in the lead, because we do not have this capacity. We have no this production lines for this now part of NATO countries, but never produced it. So we have to look to countries like Czech Republic, Slovakia, also Poland or other countries, or for sure also Ukraine. We have to give them money in order to increase their production lines. The big advantage for us is at the moment we have peace on our territories, but not Ukraine. So Ukraine production lines are always in danger to be hit by the Russians. And this is a big problem. 155 was mentioned also by Martin. The main important ammunition, we need European and common European approach, also US, but I'm now talking as a European. We have to come together. And then it is a little bit difficult if some European Union nations will not part anymore of the family, to say it in very diplomatic words, and have their own approach and will be concentrated more on humanitarian aid and not on military aid, because this decreases the possibility of European Union and NATO countries here in Europe in order to increase their support. Then there's a clear link. Send big material like howitzers without any ammunition does make no sense. This is very clear. So it is really strong connected. And now coming back to the production lines, example, in my country, we cannot produce enough ammunition. This is very clear. We cannot. I'm not talking about cluster ammunition. So we have to look other countries. And the other issue also, companies are private and they would like to earn money. You don't forget it, please. Each war, you have winners at the end. Sorry for saying that. Not everyone is doing it from heart. They are also looking to their pocket in order to get more money. This is also what we have to keep in mind. And then you have situations of natürlich competition, for sure, competition beside companies. And this does make it for governments and European Union as such, and I think also in the US, not so easy in order to support it. So last sentence, we have two possibilities. First sentence is regarding the main important ammunition to support Ukraine, to increase their production lines with the risk of being hit by the Russians. And the other side, we European countries have, and this is a clear message, have to come all together in order to bring in ammunition, because this is a game changer. When we have no ammunition, the war is over. This is pretty clear. So ammunition is a game changer. And so we need your solidarity between all our countries in order to work together. And if a country will not send military aid, so it would be great if such countries will open the door and say, okay, Germany or UK or other nations, you can buy ammunition, and then it will be under your umbrella, under your flag. We will not hamper this process, so we can be politically correct, but then please do it under the German flag. So this could be one solution in order to go, in order to send ammunition to Ukraine, which is more than needed. It is especially the game changer, for sure.
I think this is very, very crucial point that you are making, because we have many international followers currently, and there is this debate, obviously, with the new Slovak government, for instance, that no more military equipment will be going from Slovakia to Ukraine. But if there is a discussion at the European level that other European countries will come in, chip in, and be buying the, let's say, ammunition or the weaponry, I think that might be an interesting way how to actually proceed. We do have a question from the audience regarding the 155 caliber ammunition, but I'm not very sure whether Martin can answer. Maybe also Rudiger can help. But the question is that we have whether we have any estimate of what is the top potential production capacity of the I will make it Slovak companies or Czech companies, Czechoslovak companies. We do have some bigger one. I'm not going to go into details. When the European Union Commissioner Thierry Breton was visiting Slovakia, he said that the capacities, and it's been a couple of months ago, he was saying that the productions are ready to be 4 or 5 times higher than what we were having before the war. So I don't know if Martin knows what is the state of it and how much it can be extended or enlarged?
As long as I know that there were ongoing many investments with regards to increase the capacity of the for the ammunitions, but I don't have exact numbers. But yes, as you said, it should be like twice or three times more than it was before. They are even planning to invest some new money in the new buildings even for the productions, but I don't have exact number, and I don't know how it will be going on from now. But yeah, there were plans. So
certainly, for instance, we last week we had a discussion with the former deputy minister of defense in Slovakia, Mr. Marian Mayer, and he was saying, well, the business is one way, and it just simply way too connected across the globe. We cannot simply come and stop the business. That the government will simply not do that. Rudiger, maybe you can address this if you like, but if not,
yeah, very short.
go ahead.
Very short. Don't forget, we do have two pillars. The one pillar is support to Ukraine, where we need ammunition under the, I would like to say, under the Rammstein format to fit it in context. Was United States thankful and very grateful, number one, and have clear views to the other countries. So this is Ukraine. The second pillar is the protection of our NATO countries. Don't forget it. We have two different approaches. We have Ukraine support on the one hand to stop Russian invasion. And the second task, and the more important task, is for sure to protect our NATO areas, especially in the eastern part, from the Baltics to Romania. So, and to make it very short words, that means the ammunition production is also doubled, if you would like to. That means we do need ammunition in our stocks, which can be used for our forces, for deter and defense of NATO territory. And that means also, don't forget, training and so on, what we have to do so. So we need this ammunition for us. And the second part is Ukraine. That means the Slovakia, for example, has a very good capacity in order to reach this. And we are talking about in numbers, if you're asking me, we have to increase the production of ammunition, like 155 at the moment, about 6 times what we have as a current status, 6 times. And to be clear, France and Germany cannot do so. We can maximum at the moment doubling based on the other. This is really maximum what we can bring in. This is also a huge amount. We are talking about more than 1,000 rounds per day, but it is not enough. So Slovakia is, the Czechoslovakian companies are a main contributor. We are looking for, and we would like to work together. And don't forget the last item, we have a war. That means we have a current war in Ukraine, and this war is in a very bad stage. We are not talking about a very good offensive of Ukraine or of Russia. We do have what we call in Germany, in German language, Stellungskrieg. That means every day we are sending ammunition to the post of the other country, especially done by artillery. It is a bad situation where you have no movement on the one side or the other side, also no delay operation or defense operation or offensive operation. Both sides really stable. Follow on. This costs a lot of ammunition to keep this war running. It's bad to say so, but it is a fact we have to look at. And this leads to the point that we need, this is the point what Marian Mayer, I think, also said. In total, we have to, we need 6 up to 7 times in total to increase the production of ammunition under the current circumstances.
It seems, Jennifer can definitely react to this.
Sure, yeah, just to maybe give some numbers and some context. So the United States produces about 14,000 artillery shells for the Javelin per month. And it's trying to boost that to 85,000 per month, but thinks it won't get there until 2028. So it takes a really long time to ramp up this type of production. And estimates from back in November of 2022 suggest that Ukraine was firing between 4,000 and 7,000 shells per day. So I think to Rudiger's point, there's a real sort of crisis of ammunition here, both in being able to give Ukraine the materiel it needs to not cede any more territory, but also make sure that all of the NATO allies have what they need for training, for joint operations, for defense if needed, right? And we hope that we don't need it. But the concern is production can't keep up with what's being used. And so how do you figure out where factories can be stood up really quickly? It takes a long time to build a factory, to get production lines running, to work out the kinks, and then to ship that material to where it needs to go. So there's a massive logistical issue here that even once we figure out the production problem, it's, coordinating where does all of this need to go. And I think this is really one of the consequences of focusing on more advanced, sophisticated weapons, right? And sort of ramping down the production of some of these less sophisticated but really important arms, right? Like artillery. So we focused on joint production of things like the F-35 fighter jet or the Eurofighter Typhoon, sort of at the consequence of not keeping up with production of these sort of less flashy weapons that it turns out are really important to sustain a war.
And when you're saying that production cannot keep up, that the logistical issues are huge, are there any discussions, and let's say among the researchers, like let's keep it in that level, what are the correct ways to address it? Because I mean, what could possibly states do in this kind of situation where there is a gigantic demand and where clearly it is not possible to address in the level that would be efficient?
Yeah, I think one of the real puzzles is figuring out which states are you friendly with that have manufacturing capacity. And, most of the European and US states, right, Canada, have really decreased their amount of industrial manufacturing, certainly in the past, 50 years. And so, what some of the researchers are looking at are which countries are partner nations that also have production capacity. So could a place like India, instead of trying to co-produce parts for fighter jets, use its factories to make 155 millimeters ammunition? Would that be a way to very quickly sort of ramp up this production? And, I think that gives the countries that could potentially make that ammunition a sort of pretty good negotiating point, sort of realizing the state of crisis that ammunition production is in right now.
Mm-hmm. We also hear in Slovakia about, and now correct my English on if possible, maybe Martin can help me, but to kind of service or like make the old ammunition or used ammunition to kind of renew them, and especially for instance countries like Slovakia can like collect them and kind of switch them into new. Please, Martin, explain this instead of me if you know what I'm talking about.
I know what you are talking about.
The correct word.
Yeah, that is that you can use some of the used ammunition and you can made a new ones from them from their parts, if that is a possibility. Yeah.
So some of the kind of suggested solutions are also talking about that, but then it would mean there needs to be another logistical support, major one, to come in, collect that, and bring it to the right spot. Martin, you wanted to maybe address a couple of solutions or maybe low-hanging fruits that countries do actually have or discussing in order to address the major kind of shortages in ammunition deliveries, in the logistics that Rudiger was also talking about.
So if you are talking about the logistics, that was also the huge question for Slovakia, especially with the S-300 system, and also with the mix with the aircrafts. It was a huge logistical thing for the whole armed forces, and it was pretty good made, and that it works. So yeah, that was from the logistical point of view. That was a huge task for the armed forces and for all of the others who were involved in that. So from this point of view, I think we need to cooperate even more. But there are a lot of meetings, a lot of discussions on the high level, on the lower levels, especially with the legal teams. We have a lot of discussions with the other colleagues from the other nations, a lot of discussions with the German colleagues and also US colleagues. So there is the situation is like it is. So we are doing it. We will doing it, but yeah, there's nothing concrete.
Yes, I understand. I'm going to go and move our discussion a little bit more to the monitoring and controlling part to discuss this. And as we are discussing kind of private companies and their contributions, Jennifer, how is the U.S. government and the U.S. defense industry actually being monitored by, let's say, other countries, let's say international institutions, when producing or selling weapons to Ukraine or anywhere else at this point?
Absolutely. So at least in the United States, Congress is supposed to be notified if an arms transfer is going to happen. So that's a sort of immediate domestic oversight mechanism. In terms of what the US is trying to do to be able to know what it's sending and where those arms are going, right now in Ukraine, it's trying to develop a scanning system to try and track and scan weapons. Whether or not that actually works, I think remains to be seen, but I think it's an example of trying to innovate on older systems for keeping track of weapons and keep up with a sort of faster pace of arms movement and arms use. We'll see if that program sort of plays out. In terms of how others are keeping track of what the U.S. is doing, I know we have some audience members from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. SIPRI does just an excellent job monitoring what types of weapons are sent, where and when. So I think that's the sort of main way that the U.S. does this. The United States has signed, but has now said it does not intend to follow through with the arms trade treaty. So that removes one sort of international obligation for self-reporting to other states' parties. President Biden has been quite silent on whether or not the U.S. will try to rejoin the arms trade treaty process. So as of right now, the U.S. is not part of that legal instrument. Martin had also mentioned the Anti-Personnel Landmine Treaty, right? The Cluster Munition Coalition. The U.S. is not part of those treaties either, which again exempts it and means that it doesn't have to follow some of these reporting mechanisms that other countries are participating in. So there are not actually a lot of international organizations that the U.S. reports to simply because it's not part of these conventions. So it means that a lot of what we know about U.S. arms sales actually comes from congressional reports, newspaper reports, and independent organizations like SIPRI.
I actually recently, it happened just the first days of when the Hamas attacked Israel, and then several congressmen and congresswomen in the US came on to televisions and saying that, oh, we don't really know, and I think Rudiger also mentioned it, we don't really know whether the weapons that are being sent from the US to Ukraine are now going to end up in the hands of Hamas or any kind of terrorist institutions. Is this really a topic, because it's been kind of made public in certain televisions, let's say, in the US, how we don't really know what's happening with the American weapons. Is there such situation that Washington may really not know where the major kind of fighter jets are ending up, or major weapons are ending up, or if they actually can be ending up at the hands of some terrorists, let's say in Hamas? If Netanyahu is saying that, is there any way how to actually prove it? Because, well, obviously Israeli side will be saying something that I don't know, Palestinians may disagree. I mean, again, we're ending up in a political debate at times. So how is this type of monitoring going on?
Yeah, and I think Rudiger can probably speak to this as well. I think that for the major arms, right, like tanks, fighter jets, it's really hard for those to end up in places in the US not to know where those are. It's much easier to hide, to smuggle the smaller types of arms. Most of the examples of US arms being used by terrorist organizations come from when the US has withdrawn from territory and those groups have then captured it. So in 2015, ISIS captured fleets of US military vehicles and tanks in Ramadi as it sort of pushed the US back. Same thing in 2022, the Taliban took control of US military equipment, but that was when they seized Afghanistan. So it's much harder for those groups to sort of get and transport without anyone's knowledge these big types of conventional weapons, unless it's, you know, territory that they have captured that the US has abandoned.
Mm-hmm. And then the question, very similar kind of setup for Rüdiger. How is Germany doing it internally for its own companies, and then how it allows international observers to kind of come and monitor what's happening in Germany? Because this is certainly also a very new chapter for Germany to be such a major producer and supporter with the military industry, even though it's a long-standing, very successful industry in the country. Still, there is kind of a new position for the government. If you could address this.
Thank you very much for the question and what had been already raised. To start again with an overall assessment, and I'm fully in line what had been said before. First, we are talking about the national responsibilities, the self-responsibility of a country regarding modernization, armament, disarmament, and control. So this is the first issue I would like to say. We have to do so, and like the United States, quite interesting for me, brand new. We are also looking to create a track system. So I would like to say where we can see systems, the ammunition and the smaller and bigger weapons are going to Ukraine and what's going on. I think this is a very good approach. It could be very helpful, but for sure later regarding to control it, it's becoming a little bit difficult because then it is not anymore in the hands. Second question, Germany, we do have a big experience regarding that because our company is always for years are producing a lot of weapon systems which are sold worldwide. So this is not very new for us, but at the moment, everything was related to contracts. And like I said at the beginning, it's also the first time that we have to face this experience of such a big war in the neighborhood of Germany. And that's quite also for us challenging. The third issue is, and I'm again fully in line, it is not regarding tanks and Panzerhaubitze 2000 or 2000 or other system infantry fighting vehicles. What really we are concerned are the consequences of the flow of weapons which can fall directly in the hand of terrorists and non-state actors. And so beside what we are doing nationally, a good approach could be to fit it into the already existing systems we do have, United Nations, OSCE, and so on. But to be honest, we have to face more now to the Rammstein format. This is also the reason why I mentioned it. In the Rammstein format, the United States as chair are really, I would like to say, the most important partner regarding coordination of weapon systems. And then we are not talking anymore about the big systems. We are also talking about hand weapon systems and so on, Strela, Igla, Kub, and so on, which have been used and which can be really easy profilated by
I think now, Rüdiger, the video is cutting, or so if we can you hear me?
Okay, and now you better?
Yeah, now it's better.
Yeah, I can hear you. It's now better.
Perfect. Yes, please continue. Yeah.
I will repeat only the last thing.
Yeah, you started with the smaller
format.
Yes.
And I have now United States on the chair, and this is helpful. We have to develop a system in this Rammstein format and must be transparent to all our partner states in the Rammstein format, and these are almost all NATO countries, that we do have a clear overview what is going out, what is leaving, what is coming back for maintenance or repair in order to inform us. And this could be a very good cornerstone in order to bring these results then in the international organizations like OSCE, United Nations, what I already mentioned. So we have a double check, so I would like to say. I think no nation can avoid that material is disappearing. But we have a good overview, and then we can find perhaps together solutions in order to avoid. Last sentence again, don't forget we have countries with a border to Russia, like Kazakhstan, Armenia, Albania, which have now also to invest a lot of money in order to protect their countries. It's quite interesting. And there's also a risk with the borderline to Russia and to Ukraine that weapons will disappear by non-state actors. So these countries often in case of, so it must be also included, I think so, in this system, that we can get a feedback from them as long as they are not threatened and will be also a smaller part of this war. I think we and develop altogether a first of system, like said, and I'm very United States said, yeah, it is our responsibility, and to have this track system, follow on track for logistics makes sense, but it is not a guarantee.
I will go back to these common solutions and how they are setting up or being set up at the international organizations. I will ask this to Martin. But when Jennifer was speaking about the scanning systems as kind of an innovative solution for monitoring or controlling, is Germany discussing any kind of innovative solutions internally, or maybe the business is doing in order to kind of include this into already the delivery, into the sales procedures? Is there something like this, Rudiger?
Also, difficult to answer. First answer, yes, we do so. Second, we would like, regarding new weapon system, scanning system too. The problem is we are talking about a lot of systems which are on the stocks from the German armed forces, from the companies already. And this is a little bit a challenge for us at the moment, that we are sending this so-called old material, which is also usable, to Ukraine. And this is at the moment a challenge we are discussing, but we have to come a solution as soon as possible. And when I'm right informed, we are in contact with our main partner nations in order how we can do this scanning tracking system. But like said, we have two different approaches. We have old material and we have the new material, like Susanna 2, produced by Slovakia for Denmark, Germany, and Norway. And this could be fit together by the company. So this is what we are facing. But what you are saying and forcing and pressing me is, yeah, we have to come to solutions as soon as possible in order to avoid to send it to terrorists and non-state actors.
Martin, coming back to this common solution setups, how would the international organizations such as, we already mentioned it at the level of OSCE, but if, let's say, the Ramstein format decides that, yes, we need to step up with that procedures, we need to agree, how would be the follow-up with the organizations such as OSCE or the UN in order to put it in place, make it effective, recognizable and reliable at the same time?
Yeah, the problem with the OSCE is that it is a consensual organization, so we are kind of stuck now with the situation which is ongoing now. But I would like to go a little bit slower back to the national procedures with the arms, according to the Arms Trade Treaty, that you have to fulfill with, and you have to report the informations and everything. So that's a pretty good tool in Europe, and the European Union and the Council decisions is somehow authorizes countries to ratify the Arms Trade Treaty and so on. So that's a very good instrument to work with and to start with. And then just to imagine how it works in the national level, you have some kind of a committee which is issuing a specific permit or a specific license for the arms trade. So there is a collective body, which it's compiled by an group of experts, and they are issuing the certificate, which you use then for the arms trade or selling or something like that for the private companies or for the state. So we have it something like this. So you have a lot of information about the ammunition or the conventional arms. So you have the lot numbers, serial numbers, and other identifications form. So this should be also used as information to track those weapons. We have some instruments, but it's about the application and it's about the using of them. And as it was mentioned by my colleague, it's not every state is the state party to the Arms Trade Treaty, and that is why it may differ. But I would say that in the European Union, there are rules, and if the rules if these obligations will be satisfied by the countries, I think we have a good start to focus on the tracking of the arms.
Mm-hmm. So we have a very good question coming also from the audience. Lauren Ho, I'm sorry if I'm misspelling the name, is asking about the prevention of diversion of weapons, and whether we could elaborate, and maybe Martin can, but anybody who can, on steps that Ukraine is taking together with partners to strengthen its own capacity in preventing arms diversion, both during but also building capacity for after the war. So how is Ukraine involved in all those discussions that we have mentioned? Martin, or maybe Rudiger knows, or if anybody.
Okay, then we'll talk with the bilateral issue. As you can imagine that we have very close ties to the Ukraine and a strong relationship regarding that issue. And the question is absolutely right. It is in the hand of the Ukrainians also in order to give information on our channels. That does not mean information to Russia for sure not, or to China, but especially to the partner nations and also to the nations which are, so to say, aligned to these partner nations. And this is for clear a task of Ukraine. And I can tell you, this is working. This is not a secret when I tell you that we are using this maintenance hub in Michalovce in order to work together. And it's, so to say, trilaterally, if you would like to say so. You have Slovakia as host nation. You have the German maintenance hub driven by the German MOD and the KNDS. And you have the Ukrainians which are bringing in the material with all our information we do need. So if you have a look to this very small maintenance hub, but we are talking about a lot of systems, what I mentioned earlier, which are repaired there, then this is a possibility. And so you see that Ukraine is doing its job, but you're quite right. Without Ukraine, it is not working. This is absolutely clear. And so if you are going to the next level, it must be clear that Ukraine has to give this information for sure. Without the Ukraine information, we will have no clear battlefield damage assessment. This is clear. We have no clue which systems, former German systems, to say which we are losing. Also, if tanks are hit by the Russians, then the question is the tank destroyed fully? Can this tank be repaired or not? Is this tank in the hands of the Russian armed forces now? Would like Russia use this tank, and when, for what they will use it, for training or also for fight? You can use the tank for a lot of different stories. And then we do need the information. The Russians will not give this information to us. This is also, I think, very sure for everyone who is sitting at this table here now, or this conference. So we need also a really honest picture, frank picture by the Ukrainians to us, to give us this information that we can work with that. Also that we know what is happening with the material. And if this material is lost in space, so to say, yeah, then we have to accept it. But then we have a clue which material already is away. And we have to consider in future where this material can be used in other parts of the world, or in the eastern part, or wherever. Nobody knows it. And I think this is a responsibility for Ukraine. And so, yeah, I made it on this example of bilateral or trilateral cooperation with Slovakia. This is an absolutely need. And whoever asked this question, you are right.
And another question that is very much related to this is the role of civil society organization in monitoring violence, but also usage of small arms or bigger arms. Do we know, and maybe Jennifer could address this, but or anybody else who knows, whether there are certain civil society organizations that are kind of involved in this, giving us a bigger picture of what is really going on in the war?
So I have to confess that most of my knowledge is on the sort of government and international organization side, but I know that there is, particularly after cluster munitions were brought into the war, a lot of civil society concern about where these cluster munitions were going to be used and what the long-term impact of them would be on Ukraine, and even, you know, once the conflict is over, if there's going to be a sort of long-lasting effect of those arms.
Mm-hmm. Maybe Martin can add up on this.
Yeah, I mean, what Jennifer said, there will be also explosive remnants of war, and there will be lots of things that will have to be clear after the post-conflict time. So that will be crucial from my point of view. My personal point of view is that we already have some international existing tools for arms control, and I think we should stick to them after the post-conflict times, because as I said before, there is a CFE treaty and there are others, but the CFE treaty has something which is legally binding. And then we also have in the OSCE region, we have a Vienna document 2011, and which is politically binding. And it still should serve as some kind of tool to control some military units or some of those armaments. So I think we have some of existing tools, and we should work on them, because it will be very hard from my point of view to negotiate something new in the arms controls treaties and everything in this field, because always to negotiate something new, and even after the post-conflict time, it will be very hard to reach some consensus between the countries and allies even.
Mm-hmm. And talking about the practicalities of the post-conflict times, how does this actually work? And I know this is going to be totally new and different situation, and it very much depends on how the actual result will look like. But how does it work in practice if the country delivers arms to another country? We've heard also, Rudiger, also Jennifer was talking about it, that some of them are belonging to the government, some of them probably will need to kind of return back to their original countries. How does this collection of what is left over on the ground is taking place in practice, if anyone can address this? Martin or Rudiger?
I'm not sure, because it will be the national responsibility for in this case it will be the national responsibility of Ukraine, but I'm sure that those countries who are sending our ammunition or armaments and everything or weaponry to the Ukraine, they have their own sort of documents where they have all of the numbers and everything that they sent, so they could control it. And if something happened abroad, even in the other territory, in the territory of the other states, they will for sure know that is armaments who they sent to Ukraine. And yeah, as Rudiger was telling, that it's true that the Ukraine has its responsibility for acquiring these arms, and it is their own national responsibility to hold them together and to have to have some time, have something like to keep track of them. Yeah.
Jennifer, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think to build on what Martin said, there's a lot of incentive for Ukraine to keep track of these weapons, right? Not only to know sort of what is where, what's been damaged, what might be able to be sent back for repair, but also I think there are concerns about, captured arms being captured by Russia, right, and sent to Iran or China for reverse engineering, right? And that's not in Ukraine's interest at all. It's not in anyone's interest to have that happen. In terms of, once the conflict ends logistically, what might happen to those arms that are still in working shape? the US has in the past done a buyback program where it actually buys its arms back from the country that it has given them to or lent them to. And I think one of the real challenges for Ukraine is going to be, how does it start to rebuild cities that have been completely destroyed through this conflict? And so perhaps programs like an arms buyback might be a way to get weapons out of Ukraine, but then also provide funding to try and rebuild some of the cities that have been destroyed.
Maybe Rudiger can talk about the German way. Yeah.
Yeah, this is not a German way. What we have to consider, and the biggest problem is, we are now talking about the ammunition, the systems we are bringing in. I think there's a big consensus. I'm not afraid of that. And I think there will be a lot of ways, like already had been now mentioned in overview, perhaps 80-90% where the material is also during the war and after the war. But what us as Germans is the material coming in from other countries in order to support Russia. Russia has also partner states which are delivering ammunition and material and military goods. We all know also the specific role of North Korea now, where I have at the moment no clear indications will be their material as military goods to Russia. I think we all agree there will, but we have no confirmation, so to say. We have no clue regarding the material of China and also India, which is coming to Russia in order to support them. We have one big unsolved issue. This is the new capacity and use of drones, which are really not perhaps a game changer, but these drones have a big impact to this war. Also regarding destroying material, destroying infrastructure, military infrastructure, civilian infrastructure. And it's very difficult to face and to put this capacity in one area, so to say, and to say, okay, what does it mean? 10,000 drones, 100,000 drones, 5,000 drones? What is a combat unit, so to say? Is one drone a combat unit or 100? And the question is what they are attacking. Are they attacking a ship? Are they attacking a military infrastructure like an airbase for Slovakia, Sliac, for example, which can be destroyed by drones? So we have a lot of open questions. And to be honest, I think nations and also the organizations, the treaty organizations, at the moment are not ready to cover these questions really in detail. And this concerns Germany. We have also no clue at the moment. Also, it's not so that we Germans say, okay, we know what we're talking about. Okay, we know what we're talking about, but we have also no solution at the moment for that issue. And this is very challenging for us. So we have to cover our systems, the Ukraine systems, which we had handed over. We have to cover the systems coming from other countries to this area of Ukraine. And I think at the moment, worldwide, Ukraine is the country with the most military systems worldwide. And don't forget, we are talking about a big country with long borders to the north, to the south, to the east, and to the west. We know that the border to Russia is more than 1,800 kilometers in total, which war. So there are a lot of entry points regarding weapon delivery or disappearing of weapons. And I think also Russia is not able to control it, for sure not. Also, I cannot imagine that. And to find their way out is really difficult. And what I said at last, what are the new weapon systems we are looking? We are always talking about a symmetric war. Yes, it is a symmetric war. It is not like Afghanistan, for sure. But a symmetric war with new system, hybrid, and you cannot cover this as a weapon. But it's a capacity and capability you can use. But especially if you're coming back to hard facts, then like said, drones, we have to find a solution. And the mass production of drones has the same impact, perhaps, like only one Patriot unit. Also only to have feeling regarding that on the wake scale to see what does it really mean. And it's very cheap. You know this. Can be produced very, very, very fast and can be brought to mission also very fast without this very big logical footprint, like what had been mentioned. So we Germans are looking at this, but to be honest, also in this circle, we have no solution up to now. We are only dealing with that all issues at the moment and to bring it to a concept or something like this with our partners.
Talking about solution, I'm going to address the question that we have from the audience later on, but talking about solutions, which, Rüdiger, do you think Germans are most kind of favorable for the organization or format that the solutions will be the most effective to find that? Would it be Rammstein? Would it be some other organization where, for instance, when you talk about drones, when you talk about these types of military equipment, would have to be addressed the most effectively?
Short answer. Without Rammstein, it is not. Without Rammstein, it is not working. Without United Nations and OECD, it is not working. Internally, we have to come with the Germans, and we are dealing with that. We have to come to a comprehensive approach. That means we have to bring together the main contributors, Minister of Defense, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Economics, and so on. But also, and I think our friends from CIPRI are happy to hear that, we have to bring also in our civil community, our think tankers, SVP, CIPRI, and so on, and to develop as soon as possible a German approach and non-food paper or whatever, what can be delivered to the organizations when we're studying, and also to the Rammstein format, because we have to cover the item. And this is the reason why we're sitting together here today.
Jennifer, would you have a different answer, or probably it would go the same way from the American point of view, you think?
I think very similar. And I think one of the big issues with the United States is that it doesn't often sign and ratify treaties. And so any way of working in existing treaties, I think, is more likely to get US buy-in than developing something brand new. So even if there are informal systems in place already, I think that's the best way to get the US to be able to participate without it sort of devolving into domestic political squabbling, which is what often derails US participation in these international instruments.
Thank you for this. I was talking about the question that we got from the audience, and it is regarding the central firearm register developed by the Ukrainian government. This is quite a new tool that's been talked about. But does anyone know about what this register could be helping with? Whether this is a promising tool?
Yeah, I can maybe step into that,
Martin?
because we have a lot of discussions here in the OSCE about the small arms and light weapons. And yes, that was also the other questions from the audience. There are a lot of informations from the Balkan Wars and from the projects in these areas. So yeah, this central register of firearms should help to decrease the numbers of the small arms illegally possessed or something like that. So yeah, it helps a lot, especially in the Western Balkans. There was, I think that it was in Serbia. It was in this year. There was an incident where there was some kind of shooting, and then the government made the law that everyone should get rid of their small arms, and they have more than 400,000 small arms and live weapons, which was very, very good numbers. So yeah, this should help. But again, we have to imagine that we are in the situation of the war. And I don't think that it's good to have the register and everything, but I don't think that the people are that likely to get rid of their small arms, especially when there is a conflict ongoing. So yeah, I think it's definitely a very good tool, and it helps in the Western Balkans, also in the Central Asia. But I think that in the current situation, it's very hard to deal with. But it's very good to have something like that introduced, and also again something to build on.
If anyone wants to add, go ahead.
Yeah, very short. Martin, thank you very much what you said, fully in support by Germany. In preparation of our meeting, I had the numbers of small hand weapons already now, so to say, lost in space, and we are talking about which are delivered. we are talking about in total worldwide more than 4 million hand weapons, for example. So this system makes sense. But I would like to add something else. If you're talking about Ukraine, I think it's very important what I said regarding the approach to Ukraine and the support of Ukraine also regarding arms control. And one main issue, and this can be only solved by Ukraine, supported by us, is a problem of corruption. Ammunition and weapons always leads to corruption. We are talking about a lot of money when you're talking about arms, military goods and products, no? A tank, 70 million euros, for example, or whatever. I think Mr. Zelensky is quite busy in order to fight against corruption inside his own system. We see this on the daily news and also on our reports. And I think such a sensitive topic like arms control, where we need this Ukraine support, can be not solved without support for Ukraine also in their internal against corruption. This must be out by these measures.
And this was very much also topic of the latest discussion at the council level in the European Union, because this is what also Slovak new prime minister is coming from, mentioning these outcomes. We do have about 10 minutes, so I'm going to give a short floor to each of you, and I'm going to wrap up with the question that we got from the audience, and I think it may also give some kind of a roundup for your thoughts on what we have discussed today. So there are some people, and obviously this is a long-standing topic. Just 1 second, we got one more question, so I'm checking whether this may be relevant in terms of arms monitoring. Are there any lessons learned from other ways conflict that may be applied, for example, from Balkan wars? I think we've a little bit addressed this. If you want to go, if you want to address it also in your last remarks, please be so kind. But I'm going to come back to this wrap-up question. So there are general discussions, and we have this very strongly now with the new government in Slovakia, that strong political voices, strong public voices are coming in. We hear this also in the United States, in Germany more and more, that stopping of sending the weapons to Ukraine would help to accelerate peace between Ukraine and Russia. For months, we've been hearing that this is kind of a way to play in hands of Russia, this kind of rhetoric. But can you explain why this is not the correct attitude? And I think this is kind of a underlying of our discussions, maybe to give some points on that. We started with Rudiger. Now we can give him the last word. So I don't know, Martin can address first.
Yeah, I will. I wouldn't like to speak on this topic that much, but one thing that I think that we didn't talk about, and that's I just stick it, but that there are anti-personnel landmines, and there's a huge mining situation going on in Ukraine, and I think that will be one of the first and most crucial points after the post-conflict time, that we will have to help and support Ukraine with the demining and with the destructions of these explosive remnants of war. And I think this will be one of the first things that has to happen, and there has to be a huge coalition in support of that. And it's pretty good that Slovakia has the capacity with their own system, and I think this should be the way how to support Ukraine in post-conflict times. Also, that was what I want to mention, but I don't want to go to the more political things.
That's all right. Also talking about demining, I think this is a strong topic, which even the current Slovak government is very much in support of. We do have technology. The government considers this being kind of a humanitarian aid, and this is a very, very relevant topic for us, and the coalitions are already being built. Jennifer, maybe your address.
Sure, yeah, I can speak maybe about some of the research on how conflict might end. And I think that's what's really underlying a lot of that question, right? Should the US, should NATO stop sending arms to Ukraine, really begs the question, how does the conflict end? right? Does it end in a negotiated settlement? Does it end in victory for either Ukraine or Russia? What type of negotiated settlement would be acceptable? I think one of the issues is, as we've all pointed out, with continuing to arm Ukraine is that it's fueling the conflict. And that means more civilian casualties. It means more explosive remnants of war in the country when this conflict finally does end. More towns and cities destroyed and more rebuilding that then has to occur. I think those are very powerful arguments about why a prolonged conflict is not a good idea. On the other side, right, why should you continue arming Ukraine? Without arms, it will make it extremely difficult for Ukraine to stand firm, right, and to prevent Russia from advancing further, taking more territory as it planned to do when it first invaded in February of 2022. Not arming Ukraine could force it to cede territory, right, to accept a negotiated settlement and then have a conflict bubble up again because Ukraine is not happy with having to cede territory to Russia. And I think there's also a bigger domino theory type logic, right? If not Ukraine, then when? That animated a lot of conflict during the Cold War. And I think one of the big differences is this is right next to NATO. This is in Europe. And so there, I think, are a lot of concerns. If you do not stand firm now, when will you stand firm? And that seems to be an argument that is very persuasive, I think, for continuing to stay involved in this conflict.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for these points. I would also invite our audience to get on hold or read some of the Jennifer's papers that I also managed to see there. Most of them are available online. Quite interesting topics on also on the U.S. Army and some social elements. Quite very interesting. Thank you for this, and we're looking forward to see the book that I also was talking about at the beginning. Rudiger, the last word for you. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope I can cover the questions very shortly. First, yes, we did already lessons learned. We had World War II, and we European countries learned our lessons. And one example is, for example, the Treaty of Arms Control. So this is one issue. Don't forget this, and I will always now connect to this Treaty of Arms Control and Arms Talk. Second, I think this had been mentioned already. Ukraine is destroyed for years, for sure. We Germans, we have also our experience. What does it mean if you have a country which is fully destroyed after World War II? The reasons are fully different, but only to understand now the situation. And I think the reconstruction for Ukraine will take years. And especially also, as Martin said, don't forget, you will find, like you find always in my country, up-to-date ammunition from World War II. The mining problematic, the blind ammunition that has not exploded. I think Ukraine will face this problem for a long time. Next issue, also a little bit related to the question of lessons learned. Yeah, for sure. World War II ended because Germany, my country, had been defeated by a cohesion of alliance. So that is also lessons learned, that from my point of view, we have to do everything that the cohesion of the alliance will stay, in order not to allow a country to invade in another country and to destabilize and to bring war and all the other issues with it. That means always looking to that, also based, if you look to World War II, the alliance, the Anglo-American alliance, stood fixed in order to gain the victory against my country. And this was the situation after World War II. Coming to the next, with peace talks. Peace talks are really quite important, for sure. We have to develop now who is sitting at the table, really who will negotiate such a peace, whatever it will be, a ceasefire, victory one side, other side. It's not my idea now to talk about this. But also coming back to that, here arms control must be also, again, a quite important point which had been to be discussed. The nations have to bring at the table what had been sent, what had been used, what is still missing, what is still in order. Especially not only to have a look what is used, also to avoid that this conflict by these weapons will be spread out to other regions. Caucasus region, whatever. It's not, I don't hope so, anything, or to the Baltics or whatever, that this not, or in the Baltics, what had been mentioned by Martin, that these weapons are not, so to say, the next step for an ongoing conflict in another region of the world. So this is fully clear. That regarding the parties which will sit at the table in order to negotiate peace, ceasefire, whatever, and when we are talking about territories and so on, that we are also talking about the weapons and ammunition which had been used in this war in order to avoid a next conflict or the basis, so I would like to say diplomatic, for a war. So sum up, cohesion is quite important, lessons learned, but we are doing this. And also arms control is always a main partner or a main point of effort we have to consider now and also in the future.
Thank you so much. I think this was a wonderful wrap up. You kind of saved my time to do the wrap up for this panel. I think it was no, that's perfect. Thank you very much for this. Thank you to the audience for watching, staying with us, and also sending a couple of questions. This debate will also be available if you would like to come back to it on Euractiv website, www.euractiv.sk. Also at our social network at Facebook. I would like to thank also to Friedrich Ebert Stiftung for working with us and preparing this with Euractiv and Euractiv's team, sticking with us through these times and supporting discussions on this very interesting topic for Slovakia, especially now with the new government. I think we will continue doing it. And mostly I would like to thank to Martin Oltmann, to Defense Advisor Permanent Mission of the Slovak Republic to the UN, OSCE, and other international organizations in Vienna for his contribution. Jennifer Spindle, Assistant Professor of Political Science at the University of New Hampshire. Thank you for logging in from the United States. Very early morning for you again. And to Rudiger Heinrich, Defense Attaché of the Federal Republic of Germany in Slovakia. Thank you, three of you, to audience, and have a good day. We stick with Euractiv for the future events and our articles. Have a good day. Thank you, everybody.